G'day guys, welcome to another episode of Strictly Sega. Now on this show we've covered a lot of the console's history and devices that were released around them.
We've had a look at the Mega CD, the 32X and more than a few Saturn and Dreamcast games.
Now, recently due to the economic downturn, Sega in America had to let go of most of its staff. So we thought we'd take an episode planned for a later release date and move it on up, as to give you the facts as to where Sega are now as a corporation and how they got there.
Here at Strictly Sega, we're going to take you through what happened to Sega post-Dreamcast as the company went through many changes. We're also going to take a look at the development teams, Sammy's involvement, and also Sega's biggest move, leaving the console market completely.
Well, whoever thought you would see this, huh?
Back in the early 90s, when we were watching MC Hammer's Pants dance all by themselves, just like in America, it was on in the school grounds and in the hallways here, and constant debate was going on and on. Sega versus Nintendo. Game Gear versus Game Boy. Mega Drive versus Super Nintendo.
Sadly, that's the case as Sega just couldn't afford to support the Dreamcast anymore and had to rethink their future. The year is 2001, and although the Dreamcast wasn't doing all that badly, they needed to nearly double their console sales that year or face the ever more realistic proposition of having to terminate console production.
Only 3 months later, by March 2001, Sega was sure that the Dreamcast had no chance of competing with the PlayStation 2.
The biggest reason being the PlayStation 2 had a DVD player, and this was during the middle of the global DVD surge, as well as the polygon processing, with the PlayStation 2 coming in at a cool 20 million polygons per second, as opposed to the Dreamcast's pitiful 7 million per second. So after Sega folded under the pressure and cancelled the Dreamcast, they made an announcement that they would focus on game development and publishing from now on.
They started by making games that were already made and re-releasing them on other available successful platforms, starting with Choo Choo Rocket on the Game Boy Advance in 2001. First time Sega and Nintendo's brand name was ever printed on the one product. Sega, on the other hand, never stopped making arcade machines, continuing to support the Nomi for a couple more years, and then moving over eventually to the current Lindbergh board, with games like Virtua Fighter 5, Initial D, and House of the Dead 4.
So after a few successful titles like Sonic Adventure 2 Battle and Super Monkey Ball on the GameCube, Sega was still falling upon hard times. This was partly due to Isao Okawa, Sega's chairman for 40 years, passing away in March 2001. His presence was truly missed, as he was extremely dedicated to Sega. For example, upon release of the Dreamcast, Isao Okawa injected over $40 million into Sega's marketing to promote the Dreamcast in America. He even left in his will over $600 million worth of assets to Sega Enterprises.
Lacking a strong leadership base, Sega was slowly falling apart. They were even forced to release control over their 15 development divisions, which got us thinking, how many do you think you could name? Well, we're going to start with the Japan 9 first.
AM1, otherwise known as WoW Entertainment, are responsible for the House of the Dead series, plus the Bass fishing game on the Dreamcast. AM2, famous for having Yu Suzuki's influence. He produced a lot of groundbreaking games like Virtua Fighter and Virtua Racing, plus other hit titles including classics like Outrun, Hang On, Space Harrier, Virtua Cop, Daytona USA, Ferrari F355 Challenge, and the Dreamcast's pricey $77 million epic Shenmue. AM3, renamed Hitmaker in 2000, They were eventually absorbed due to the Sammy merger, but during their heyday they made games like Crazy Taxi, Virtua On, Cyber Troopers, also Star Wars on the 32X and Last Bronx on the Saturn, a game we plan to have a look at in the next episode.
AM4, also renamed Amusement Vision in 2000, were more of an arcade development group, making quirky games like Super Monkey Ball and Virtua Striker, and one of the first Sega Nintendo joint projects, F-Zero AX, at the arcade.
Hey, M5, also known as Sega Rosso. They ended up merging with AM3, the hip maker. But during their heyday, they made classic titles like Sega Rally Championship or Star Wars Trilogy. And up until 2006, they made Initial D games too.
AM6, otherwise known as Smilebit, had quite a few members from Team Andromeda who were best known for their Panzer Dragoon series. Their informal goal was one new franchise a year, an impressive feat achievable only by a seasoned development team, and for a while they were doing it, producing some incredible works that were definitive of Sega's style, focusing on originality and strong gameplay. Before the Sega Sammy merger, Panzer Dragoon Auto marked the climax and the end of Eastern-style game development that valued unique gameplay and creativity above the focus on gimmicks and franchises. My personal favourite development team, AM7, otherwise known as Overworks. It was another blow to Sega in my opinion to see this development group merge with AM1. As we went into during our first episode of this season, Overworks has done some stunning games. If you want to know what they are, you can either do some research yourself or just check out episode 1 of season 3.
That brings us to AM8, the most successful team so far, and the creators of that little blue ball that us Sega fans have come to love over the years. You know who I'm talking about. That's right, Sonic Team. Not to be mistaken for Sonic Team USA. Sonic Team Japan started way back in 1992, and although all the original team members have departed, the name still lives on. At their peak, they did many classics and really took advantage of Sega's available hardware at the time, and were always trying to make the most of it, whether it be the lock-on cart for Sonic and Knuckles, or the flat-out power of Nights into Dreams, or the innovative forward thinking of Samba de Amigo. Not to forget Choo Choo Rocket, the first ever online console game, as in internet, opposed to peer-to-peer.
AM9 wraps up Japan 9, and in my opinion, we're somewhat saving the best for last. Now I know I'm probably going to be laughed out of the room, but one of my favourite games on the Sega Dreamcast happens to be Space Channel 5, with great music and an energy that really gets you involved. But the team who made this was United Game Artists, another sufferer of Sega's relations with development teams. Now if United Game Artists could win Grammys, then Rez would have won Best Soundtrack by a long shot. We take a deeper look at Rez in Season 4, but till then, take our word, it's a great game and inspired one of the greatest peripherals in history.
6 more left. Now on to the American divisions.
Let's start off with STI, which stands for Sega Tech Institute. It's sad to say, but in my book, they're best known for their failure on Sonic Extreme, but have also popped out a few hits like Sonic Spinball and Comic Zone, plus their assistance on Sonic 2, 3 and Sonic and Knuckles.
And then there's Sega Soft, Sega PC, Sega Racing Studio and Wavemaster. Oh, and Sega Studios USA or Sonic Team USA. Some of the development teams even had to merge just to stay afloat, which was a real shame, and by 2003, after many long and failed talks, Sammy came in and snapped up 22% of Sega for $1.1 billion. By the time Sammy took the reins, Sega was but a shell of its former self.
Sammy Incorporated made their fortune making pachinko machines that have found a real cult following in Japan and Taiwan. People spend literally days on those machines trying to win big jackpots, and are most popular where gambling is strictly forbidden. Lots of dark, dingy pachinko halls have been opened, and there's some mention of the actual Japanese mafia having their fingers in the pie.
Following the merge between Sega and Sammy in 2005, Sega Sammy Holdings became one of the biggest game manufacturing companies in the world. So Sega's future, although very different, doesn't seem so dim anymore. The redundancies earlier this year wasn't taking a step back, but just keeping up with the tight economy.
We hope you found this episode helpful, as far as getting to know Sega just that little bit more. As you can see, they're not the same company as they were in the 90s or the early 2000s. And with whispers in the wind of a new portable device possibly coming out in the near future, all we can do is sit back, twiddle our thumbs, and wait.
So, scattered throughout this season while we're twiddling our thumbs, we're going to be having a look at some current gen Sega games, and we're also going to have a look through how Sega's transformed themselves into the current amusement and publishing company we see them as today.
But with that said, it's a bit of a shame to see Sega in this state, almost a shell of their former selves. A bit like Infogrames were during the Dreamcast period. All fillers, but no killers. Anyway, here's Grub's 2 cents. We'll see you next week, guys.
It's just for me, I know that. Because we're using one of the finish it. Oh, here we go. Oh, it's funny. That was a take. Alright, let's try another take.